Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the World Crypto Network. Guys, I'm so excited for the show today. We have an amazing show for you guys. We're going to be talking about side chains, drive chains, RSK, next level, Bitcoin 2.0 amazing technologies here that is really coming down the pipe that is really going to reshape how people think about Bitcoin, I think, in the coming year in 2018. So without further ado, guys, let me introduce the amazing panelists that are going to introduce you guys to this technologies. So go ahead, let's introduce Mr. Diego first, Diego of RSK Labs. Diego, how are you doing today, man?
Very well. Thank you for having me here. Always a pleasure. And to share the space with Paul, which is a great celebrity in the space as well. So.
Oh my God, celebrity.
That's right. We got some Bitcoin celebrities right here, guys. So thanks, Diego. Thanks, Diego, for joining us so much. We know we just barely got you. You're actually in the airport right now. So thanks again so much for joining us, donating your time, man. I know it's last minute, so I really appreciate it. These guys are traveling all over the world, people. These are, presenting their technologies at conferences and everything like that. So we really appreciate them donating their time. Mr. Paul Stortz, pretty well known around the Bitcoin community. Paul, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks. I'm so glad to be back on the show. Such a fun show. Mad props to Diego for doing this in the airport. Wow, like that's dedication.
Yeah, dude, it's Diego don't mess around, people. This is Bitcoin does not mess around. Bitcoin doesn't stop. Bitcoin is 24/7, and that's why we love it. So
would Jeff Bezos do it from? Would Jeff Bezos
the airport? I don't know. Maybe back in the early days of the web, he was as committed as we are today. But I think time is of the essence, and that's why we work around the clock as well, because we are in a moment, in a pivotal moment for the ecosystem. We are in a moment where if we settle the grounds, the solid basis for what we are building, then this is unstoppable. But we are not yet in the point where it's fully unstoppable. So that's why we need to keep working hard to make it happen.
We got to keep educating the people about Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
Keep talking Bitcoin. So awesome, guys. So let's go ahead and start. We got over 430 viewers already, guys. So thanks so much for joining us here and in the chat. Should be a good time. So before we get into the nitty gritty of these amazing technologies, let me just kind of get your guys' opinions on the ongoings here of Bitcoin. What happened this week? So there was a couple major things that happened, and let me just ask you, Paul, first. What is your opinion on the Lightning Spec 1.0 getting released? What do you think are the implications of this, and what is your opinion on this?
Well, I mean, the Lightning Network technology is really awesome, and it has lots of potential to do, lots of revolutionary things. We're talking like everything from you could change how BitMessage works. You could go back to, there's all these micropayment things, but there's also privacy. I think the big challenge for the Lightning Network, for some reason, I don't know why this is the challenge, but for some reason, it seems to be that a lot of people just are impatient or they kind of don't believe in it. And so unfortunately, I think the impact is not going to be very high, because I think there's this whole group of people that just won't invest in the Lightning Network emotionally or economically until they can kind of really see it working. So I was much more impressed by the demo that I think was also 5 or 6 days ago. I think the demo is cooler, where you see the user interface and stuff like that. That's stuff that maybe people in Bitcoin don't usually get really excited about. That's user interface stuff. But when I see that, I see something that's more persuasive. And so I
think that's a general problem with launching a new technology. That is kind of a chicken and egg situation, because you don't have network effect initially, and until you don't have, there's no network effect. So you have to be putting more money at stake and more economic interest, and at the same time creating awareness. So it's that's the difficulty. And I think how long it took to Bitcoin to catch up, maybe 3 years, 4 years before it started to gain some momentum. So with all these technologies, it's the same. It happens the same to us with RSK. It's a process.
It's not funny. Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because I think this is supposed to be the not really related to sidechains part, but I think they are kind of related, because Bitcoin is very new, and I think Lightning Network has a different security model, and sidechains also have a different security model.
Absolutely.
It is frustrating that I think the security model just kind of has to be good enough, and no security model is perfect. And I think that is kind of a sticking point for people. They don't appreciate just how novel a lot of this stuff is. So this stuff is very new. It'll take some getting used to, and unfortunately, some people they'll have to wait until they.
And it's true, like it's really difficult for people. I agree, guys. It's really difficult for people to kind of conceptualize this kind of stuff, because this is bleeding edge fintech. This is real fintech, not FinUX like PayPal or Venmo. This is actual real fintech. And so to see those lightning demos, I really encourage everybody go check out those videos. You can find them on like Jack Maller's account, who created the Zap wallet. There's some other people as well. There's 2 or 3 different lightning wallets out there right now, and there's videos of people buying coffee, quote unquote, right? Like on the website, you can there's purchases for $2 and $3, and people are buying this on mainnet. Okay, this is not testnet. This is not 5 years from now. They're doing this now. So I just wanted to point that out too. So this is really amazing stuff. So guys, check that out. Okay, very cool. Let's go. Let me ask you then. Let's ask Diego on this. What do you think of all the talk about the futures, right? Because we got the CME, the CBOE, NASDAQ, and today specifically, in a few hours, I think we have the CBOE launching their futures version, right? So what is your thoughts on all these futures markets? And is this bad? Is this going to be too centralized, or is this good for Bitcoin to get institutional investors in?
Well, it's always a challenge, because it's like, when you get institutional investors, they can manipulate the price in a way. I mean, they could crash the market. And what I'm not sure is if the exchanges will follow the traditional markets, or the traditional markets will follow the exchanges. I mean, one of the interesting things of Bitcoin that is a true free market. Like all the exchanges, are independent parties. Of course, there's people doing arbitrage among them, but that's my main concern. I mean, I don't know how markets will react, who will follow who, and maybe for sure institutional investors will be more sensitive to things that crypto enthusiasts are not. I mean, if Jamie Dimon says something bad about Bitcoin, we just start partying because that's a new pump for Bitcoin. But in the other, seen from the other perspective, it might be creating panic and FUD. So we don't know.
Yeah, and it's really going to be interesting to see. We were talking before the show where it could just go either way. We just don't really know. But I think what we came to the conclusion of is you don't bet against hodlers. And it's just really not a good idea to try to short Bitcoin this early into the game. So let's get Paul's opinions on this. Paul, what do you think about all these futures launching? And is this really like, are people going to short it into the ground like they're saying? Or is this really a monumental kind of moment for Bitcoin, for large institutional investors to come in and for Bitcoin to really start eating the traditional markets?
Well, it's a question of liquidity. So it improves liquidity by giving people more options to increase their exposure to Bitcoin, either in the short sense or the long sense. The ability to short Bitcoin is something we've had for a while. So you can short on various exchanges. So I think the concern about shorting specifically is just false. But obviously, what people are concerned about is just the sheer volume of money that can come into these contracts that are not. It doesn't settle in Bitcoin. So these people will not really need to. Traditional shorting is you borrow some Bitcoin and sell it, and then you have all of your cash and you wait for the price to go down. Hopefully for you, it does go down in this scenario, and then you rebuy it, and then you pay back the Bitcoin that you borrowed. And so that is how it normally works. But that would be more like a forward contract perhaps, but these are futures. So what's happening here is the Gemini exchange. And I haven't looked into the details of the Gemini exchange, which would be interesting, because it would be interesting to see how many, it could be like a Russian dolls thing. But Gemini exchange has a price, and whether or not, whatever the price is at the end of the day is what these things will end up paying the winners and losers based on. I think in general, more stuff means that it's easier for the price of Bitcoin to converge to the true, so-called true or most justified price. So whether that price is low, indicating people still don't understand Bitcoin, or whether it's high, indicating that some people do understand it, or they have a conjectural hypothesis that maybe this is worth 0.1% of my hedge fund or whatever, which I think a lot of people will be thinking. I certainly know a lot of people who want to invest in Bitcoin, but it's too difficult for them to manage it or buy it in a normal way. So just think about how difficult it is to manage your own keys. That is a major barrier for all this money. Then now that barrier won't be present. So I expect it to have a positive impact on the price, but there's no way to know. I think it will converge more quickly to the true price, though.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting. I think that today is going to set the precedent for the trading of next week. We're going to find out what really happens tonight in a few hours when trading starts. And, it's really, I think, going to be an example of good money driving out bad money. There's a lot of worry about there's probably more fiat against Bitcoin than for Bitcoin. And it's like, do you remember what fiat was for again? I mean, it's completely worthless. How can there be?
The whole point of having the markets is that there's no reason for us to argue about how much fiat is for Bitcoin versus against, because the whole point of having the market is that we're going to run the experiment and find out. So
exactly. The argument is pointless. We're going to find out because, it's just the same argument of Bitcoin Cash. What's the real Bitcoin? Well, just take a look at the market and you have your answer right there. So any more comments on this?
Also these are dynamic systems. So it's like, people like to see these as a still. And the truth is these are evolving systems, and that's the beauty of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not the democracy, it's not the majority oppressing the minority. Bitcoin is, Darwinism in play. So you don't like the Bitcoin that you have, you can fork it, do your Bitcoin, put your resources, follow your vision, and the markets eventually will decide. And maybe one will win or both will leave and fulfill different needs. And interesting thing. It's like Bitcoin is unstoppable because of that, because you can fork it to the moon. I mean, it's like, and each fork give us a lesson and teach us something, and we get stronger as an ecosystem for that. Look at Ethereum. What happened with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic was the first actual situation where we had a fork, like, a real fork on the live network, and we learned tons of it. We learned that forks, if they have market pricing, they will survive, that, they don't necessarily need to be majority of the hashing, because we had a lot of supposition, things that we were guessing that, now we know how forks were, that it's not only technology or hashing power, it's also economics. So we go learning more and more in each one of these forks.
Absolutely. And I think one of the main things we've learned is to not go against the community, because the community will, do what they want to do. They will create a fork if they want to create a fork, and that's perfectly fine, and we should be okay with that. But, trying to take on the community like these people did with SegWit2x, and, they tried to go, some of these miners tried to go against UASF. I mean, we saw what happened, right? They caved when you try to go against.
Yeah, I think, and that was I was very vocal within the SegWit2x group, because SegWit2x was inspired by SegWit2MB that we created with Sergio. Sergio did all the technical part, of course. I was telling all the time that I think we are missing one piece in the visibility of the status of the community, and that's the signaling from the transaction originators. Because in every crypto economy like Bitcoin mostly that has hashing power, you have four stakeholders. You have the miners that are providing the security infrastructure. You have the full nodes that are providing the communications, the communication and validation backbone. You have the coin holders, but then you have the people, the wallets, the exchanges, the people who actually create the economy in the ecosystem. And from a perspective of doing hard forks or updates in decentralized systems, the two most important ones are the miners and the economic actors, because those are the ones that are, keeping the economy moving. So you need to have clarity if they are willing or ready to.
Might have lost Diego there, but yeah, I completely agree. You have to have the community there if you're going to try to fork. Diego, maybe just turn off your video.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just do audio only. But yeah, definitely agree with that. And so I think we can move on to I want to move on to the main stuff, guys, to the main technology. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's start with Paul here. I want to talk about in this episode here, I wanted to talk about both sidechains and RSK, since RSK is a sidechain. So let's go ahead and start and open up with a discussion a bit about sidechains, Paul, and kind of why we're here. And so the main big thing I want to get across to people here is that sidechains now, specifically drive chains even, from Paul here, has been has created a submission for a bit. So we don't have a bit for it yet, but he actually has put forth the submission for a Bitcoin improvement proposal. And this is where we are now in this timeline of drive chains and side chains. We're now getting ready for a proposal. And of course, after that comes an actual BIP. And of course, after that comes the implementation and so on and so on. So, it's still early days, but this is really important, a really important milestone that I want people to understand that we are now that much closer to getting this kind of technology out. And so let me ask you first, Paul. Tell me the difference real quick between drive chains and side chains, because I want people to understand that side chains is more of this kind of concept that we have is just right now is more hypothetical, more just on paper. But drive chains, you actually went ahead and the drive chain is an actual real concrete implementation of side chains. And so I want that for people really to understand too, that we have side chains, we have drive chains, but drive chain is really the first practical use of side chain technology and really trying to bring that forward into the community. So go ahead and take it, Paul. Let me ask you, like, just really quickly from a high level, maybe you can describe the benefits of drive chains and kind of your description of them.
Sure. So it's always a challenge to describe this because it's a little complicated, and obviously it's difficult to describe anything new because by definition it's unlike anything that happened before. But the core idea for sidechain is really that can't we kind of diffuse this annoying negative energy of the altcoin, that there's this stuff out there that what if an altcoin wants to do something different, and maybe the altcoin has better marketing, or maybe it has different technology, maybe it's Turing complete, maybe it uses proof of stake, maybe it uses whatever. So the altcoin allows for a lot of permissionless innovation. And what the idea of the sidechain is that can we make something that is basically, it's sort of like in a kind of like a half and half state where it's sort of like Bitcoin in the important ways and the altcoin in the important ways. And so it gets the best of both worlds. So basically, a sidechain is an altcoin that shares Bitcoin's 21 million coins. Right. So you have your Bitcoin, and you can send them over there. The sidechain starts with 0, ends with 0, but you can send them over there. And so basically, it lets Bitcoin eat the lunch of the other competitor chains. So that's kind of the broad strokes. And sure. So let me just repeat that real quick for the audience. So just from the high level view, basically these drive chains, which is an implementation of side chains, will allow people to do all sorts of experimentation on top of the Bitcoin network, because anything in that drive chain, that actual chain there is actually pegged to Bitcoin. So the coins on the drive chain are pegged to the Bitcoin. So you basically, what that means is you get all of the security and integrity and network effects of the actual Bitcoin itself, the Bitcoin network effect, the censorship resistance, the decentralization, all of that you get from the Bitcoin network itself. But in addition to that, you get this additional rule set that you can define. For example, if you want to create a version of Bitcoin that's more like Ethereum, then, for example, with smart contract technology, like Diego was doing with RSK, you can create a sidechain and peg that to Bitcoin, and now you get to enjoy all these benefits of Bitcoin, but with your own custom rules. Does that sound about right, Paul? Yes, you can make all the weird mistakes you want, and it won't. The chains are all firewalled from each other, so it's a little bit as though they were all islands. And the idea of sidechains is that wouldn't it be cool if we could just get on a plane and it would take us from one island to the next, but the same number of people, so to speak, if the people are the coins. And then the difference between sidechains and drive chain is that sidechains is just this idea. What if we could have the same people shuttle around between different islands in the ocean? And whereas drive chain is like kind of an actual specific thing, like a 747 for Virgin Airlines or something. It's like one real thing versus just an abstract idea. So I'm very excited to present the actual, like a very specific specification and working code, which obviously needs a lot of review, but it's working code.
So just like Lightning, just like Lightning, they released their 1.0 specification, right? Now you are releasing a sort of 1.0 specification that the whole community can now take a look at. So we are moving forward, people, really, really fast with Bitcoin. There's a lot of people that are like, they get impatient and they're like, 2017, that's too long. Or 2018, that's just too long. But look, good code takes time. Groundbreaking, decentralized, censorship-resistant technology takes time, right? This is not a PayPal app. This is not a website. This is not MySpace. These are real apps designed for real use, and this is just huge. That we can have both the sidechain implementation and Lightning's implementation in by the end of 2017. That means that all that's left to do is to build it. The conceptualization phase is over, people. Okay, we are now going to go into the building, and this is the infrastructure that I described that's going to really be built out in 2018 that will allow Bitcoin dominance to go shoot right back over 80%. Again, when the price is rising and you have all this technology, the question you have to ask yourself is, what do you want to do? Do you want to rewrite the wheel? Do you want to, make the reinvent the wheel? Or do you want to jump on the TCP/IP of money, the internet of money, right? So very interesting. Diego, do you have anything to comment on this before we start asking you about RSK?
No, that one thing, I mean, in sidechains was very difficult to implement with Bitcoin because Bitcoin doesn't have a Turing-complete language. So it's difficult for Bitcoin to understand other data structures that are different from its structure. And in the case, for example, of RSK is a account-based blockchain, and Bitcoin is a UTXO-based blockchain. So how you understand what is going on another blockchain if you don't have full capabilities to do complex calculations. So you cannot analyze within the blockchain an SPV proof or a transaction that happened on the other blockchain. And to have a two-way peg, that's a sidechain, is a way to transfer or to lock value in one chain and issue value in the other, and then destroy value on the secondary and release the locked value in the original blockchain. You need those blockchains in a way to understand each other. So that was that's why I think what Paul came out with DriveChain is genius, because it's a way to simplify this process of Bitcoin understanding other blockchains, but it has some challenges as well. No, we can talk about that later.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then, let me just get this from you, Paul, because people love dates, man. Everybody wants an exact date. They want freaking roadmaps. They want it all right now, even though this is free, open source technology. People, where the roadmap doesn't actually exist. There's no such roadmap, but people want dates. And so let me ask you, Paul. What do you foresee the date of this DriveChain technology, of really people starting to maybe take this technology and run with it? Do you see that happening by the end of next year or later? What is your, complete guesstimate of when you see people start taking up this technology?
Oh, I think it could be very soon, because we have one instance where we have the Bitcoin Cash instance where people want to. There are people in the Bitcoin community who want something that is not Bitcoin, which is that they want to increase the block size greater than what the limit currently is. So they want to do an altcoin-like thing, and that is very easy, something that's very easy to program. So the ratio of work you would have to do to create the sidechain versus the interest that has already been expressed in it is very great. So when you have lots of people who want something, it's much easier to get it to happen. The question is, when will Bitcoin Core, merge, or if ever, they merge the DriveChain functionality into Bitcoin Core, so that it's Bitcoin Core that gets DriveChain before someone, I can have no control over if someone takes it, obviously, and copies it. And I'm sure we may have 20 to 30 different, whatever, DriveCoin, altcoin that I have nothing to do with, or whatever, weird. Because these days, anyone will take any tiny little thing. Any little thing. It's kind of like movies today, where they're like any little thing to get the marketing. And then we can make an entire $100 million movie about that.
So,
whatever little thing.
So let me ask you this, Paul. Then, so you're saying basically other implementations, such as Bitcoin or some of these other implementations that try to move a little bit faster than Bitcoin Core, right, to provide an alternative. You think probably one of those will begin to implement before we get it in?
That's not really what I meant. What I meant was, you have these people. You have a lot of it's like you want these things, people want to reach each other, and they're kind of getting closer and closer from different sides. And so it's easier to make that connection happen because you have some pressure. There are people who are loyal to Bitcoin Core, but they want a larger block size anyway. And this lets them kind of have that because they can just move to a sidechain that is exactly the same. It doesn't have any emergency difficulty adjustment or any other weird unknown quality changes. It's just, so what I'm saying is very easy to create the large block sidechain, and there's a lot of demand for that. And I don't know,
indeed,
RSK is another example where
RSK is an example of that.
Yes, people really like Ethereum. It's unclear to me exactly why they really like Ethereum, which matters a lot, whether or not it's as an alternative or whether or not it's for the technology, because you can see a lot of evidence for both. But RSK is another example. It's just saying that the ratio is slightly different because it's much more difficult to build RSK than to just change some numbers. And it's also the excitement, I think, is not as demonstrated. I think you would actually get people, like you could get like Coinbase and BitPay, you could get them to bite at the large block sidechain very quickly, and they would force other people into using it, and you could put all the payments people, they would be able to do that. And so that is the real question for me, is when a user can use it, because we do need like different wallet software that is aware of multiple different chains.
Yes.
So we need a block explorer. So people need to understand what's going on, because their money won't just be on Bitcoin. It will be on, they will own Bitcoin
on a sidechain. Yeah,
they in some location that they may not understand. So they need to understand that their Bitcoin can inhabit a different place, the same way they could, it's like the same web browser. Or that's not a good example. I'm not sure what a good example would be, but maybe like Microsoft Word versus Microsoft Excel or something.
It's like having the stock rights and not the stocks in a way.
Yeah, right. Well, there's certainly a learning curve for other stuff. But what the point is, there's this learning curve you can beat for the large block sidechain, because people want that and it's simple. So that is.
So that's an example. Let me see. Let me cut you off here real quick, Paul. Let me say. So that is one great example of a sidechain, is somebody wanted to create like a larger block size and then put that in a sidechain, and then they can experiment with that. So that's good. But let me ask you just real quickly then, Paul, what are some like real world examples in addition to that we could see as early as next year? Because I know that there's Liquid, and maybe you can talk about that. But what are some real world examples that we can tell the audience that is either coming down the pipe next year or getting there, besides RSK? Of course, we're going to get into that. That's a big one.
Okay. No, because that's, I mean, we do much more than, I mean, we don't get bigger blocks. We are changing the consensus protocol. So it can be as extreme as that. It's like we have a consensus protocol called Decor Plus that, validates every 15 seconds, every 13 seconds, like Ethereum does, but has income smoothing. So there's no selfish mining attack, for example. So we are completely, it's not even about, increasing the size of the block, releasing it. It's, you can do like very dramatic things, but you're still using the security of the Bitcoin network, and you're still using Bitcoin as a currency, which is the one with the highest liquidity all over the world, which is not, a little thing to say.
And that's important. Absolutely, that's important. Remember, what Diego just said is they completely changed the whole consensus mechanism for RSK, for the sidechain. And so you can really get really extreme from just increasing the block size on a sidechain to completely changing the consensus mechanism on a sidechain. So that's really important. But do we have besides RSK, just real quick, do we have any real world examples of sidechains coming down the pipe? I know Liquid is one. Maybe we can talk about that. Just really quickly for the audience to kind of grasp and take away. What can we see coming down the pipe in 2018 for sidechain wise besides RSK?
Yes, well, we could talk about Liquid, but Liquid is more, I think the Lightning Network favorably competes with Liquid. So I think Liquid is this other thing that I'm not sure that people really love. It's not really, first of all, it's not really like a user to user type thing. It's like a business.
No, it's a B2B. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think, I have my own project, which is Bitcoin Hivemind, which everyone can read about it. I don't know how to plug it, but I think it's a really awesome project, and so do a lot of other people. So bitcoinhivemind.com if you want to figure that out. I think certainly some kind of Namecoin or Namecoin-like thing could, I'm not sure, because people work on that. They're dedicated to working on that project, even though it doesn't really get a lot of attention, even though it's a pretty cool idea. And I think you could significantly expand it to, instead of just being for domains, and I think it's already expanded, but it's not like no one's using it for these new things. But I think it would be nice if like you could give someone an identity, and then that would be their reusable Bitcoin address, their stealth address. It could be their Onion website. It could on Tor. It could be their like BitMessage address or their email address or their public key. It could have all this other stuff attached to it. So I think an identity thing would be cool. I think definitely a Monero type thing, like a ring signature or a privacy thing, a Mimblewimble type thing. Those are all possible that make it easier, that increase kind of privacy and fungibility. So I think the cool thing, though, it's a totally it's a cop out, and I hate saying this is so awful. Well, first of all, you can copy almost anything. So like even weird stuff like Ripple or stuff that like people like. It's interesting that Ripple kind of not, because it's like this weird legal entity that has these formal relationships with banks and stuff. But even like R3 Corda stuff, you can kind of. But the cop out answer is that you don't really need to know, right? Because it's like it unleashes creativity that before would have been drowned, because the altcoin space is so scammy that it's just awful. It's anyone with a really good idea is probably right now being suffocated by just this endless onslaught of just the ICO and the multi-level marketing kind of stuff that goes into these projects. And so now there's no opportunity for good ideas to rise up. And it's the whole point of great ideas is that we haven't thought of them yet. We don't know what they are. So
absolutely. That's a great point, Paul. That's what I want people to take away from.
I think I would synthesize.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I would synthesize it like that. Is like sidechains are an opportunity to do experimentation on the Bitcoin network. And, you mentioned Liquid. Liquid is a private blockchain. So it's like basically targeted to sub-second, settlements and high volume of transactions. So it's targeted for a specific, maybe exchange to exchange is the main goal of because there's trust, there's hardware, security modules. So you have like it's more traditional model, but still what they are doing is pegging it to Bitcoin. So the value that is moving in that private network is Bitcoin. In the case of RSK, it's a public network, also using Bitcoin as collateral or as backing for the currency, and you can do so much more things. It's like that's the beauty of it. It's like we are opening the doors of experimentation on Bitcoin while we keep the Bitcoin safetiness at the maximum.
Diego, what is your strategy for crypto kittens, though? What is the strategy for that?
All right.
Well, I'm launching a site. It's called Crypto Puppies, and
I
think it will be very successful.
That's perfect. That's great.
We can process out of the gates. We can process 4 times more, puppies,
more animals
than Ethereum. Yes, 4 times more animals.
There we go.
So
So let me just recap this real quick. So what I really want people to take away from this is not that you can make crypto puppies, okay? No, you can though, but no. What I want people to take away from this for real. Yeah, what I want people to take away from this for real is that sidechains allows for experimentation on Bitcoin. We don't actually know what we're gonna be able to create. It's like saying, well, now that we have altcoins, what can we do? Well, we can do infinite amount of things. So this is what's really great is that sidechains opens up this amazing level of experimentation, this amazing platform for experimentation within the Bitcoin network, with all the security, integrity, and that comes with Bitcoin, with the ecosystem that comes with Bitcoin. And so this is just really important. And so there's a few things in the works, some business-to-business stuff, some RSK, of course, we'll get into it, and some other things. But this is what's really important. The code is here now. The specification is here now. If you're a developer, you can go and check this out and help out with this, develop it, or use it to build your own thing. So this is really important. This is really big, and I think that there'll be a lot of experimentation next year with, excuse me, with sidechains and with this technology, with drive chains specifically. So very cool, Paul. Okay, so let's go to RSK here, Diego. We've been talking about this, bouncing around a little bit so far of the conversation, and I want you to just maybe give your high-level opinion of what RSK is and how it can kind of benefit everybody. So go ahead, Diego.
Well, RSK is a network. It's a smart contracts network that is secured by the Bitcoin network, because we modify the mining software of the pools in a way the miners with the same infrastructure they have today, they can protect 2 blockchains at the same time. So that's the first element. The other strategic decision we made is that instead of having our own token, what we did is we created a sidechain to Bitcoin. So every smart Bitcoin in RSK is backed one-on-one with a Bitcoin in the Bitcoin network. So there's no minting of new coins. Well, this concept we have been discussing. No, you take part of the value of Bitcoin and you transfer it to a secondary network and you work with it. So, and the third element is that we decided to, because we think one thing that Ethereum did very well was creating an amazing developers community, although it needs to mature in terms of, at the beginning they say, okay, we want to bring the web-like simplicity to smart contracts, and now we know that's not such a good thing. So we need to find a middle ground between, ease of use and security. But still, I think the experimentation they did and the community they built was very good. So we decided to initially support in full the Solidity language and the RPCs. But in our point of view, from the very beginning, we said we will also have additional runtimes with, maybe more restrictive languages and more, mature languages. Because the things that Solidity is going through are the things that every programming language goes through in the early years. It's part of the process. When you talk about software, operative systems, there's a hardening phase that you cannot avoid. It's like, when you realize, oh, oops, we set all the methods to default in public, and that makes any developer, with a few hours of sleep, make a mistake, because by default everything is public. So why don't we put the default to private? But as we want to keep compatibility, because we want to give the Ethereum community an alternative execution environment, we'll have like runtime 0 that it's always be compatible with Ethereum, with the goods and bads, and we'll add new runtime environments. The first one will be in Java, so you will be able to program smart contracts in Java. It will be a hardened version of Java, but still, that also in our point of view, and that's one thing, Bitcoin is too hard to develop on top of it. I mean, it's highly secure, but it's also very limited, the people who really understand it and really can do things. And that I was in a panel in Colombia with Peter Todd like a week ago, and I was telling him that, because he's now working on something that I think is great, that is like oracling and execution of a smart contract. So you basically have the world state of your smart contracts running in your computer. You just drop a proof into the Bitcoin blockchain, so you don't have to share anything else. Everything is like private, but anybody else that has the same world state can validate that what you did is correct. So it's like, and I think that's great because it scales nicely. But I mean, using that in practical environments is difficult. It's like only a few developers can understand how it works, put it to work. So we have to, and I like something that Adam Back says. He calls the side chains or even RSK as a middle security network. So it's like, of course, there's a trade-off. You are not trying to be as secure as Bitcoin. What you're trying to do is indeed bring more flexibility, and flexibility has a cost. No, the cost is security.
Absolutely. So really awesome stuff. So let me just recap a little bit, and you tell me if this is right, Diego. So basically, I just want everybody to know that this is yet another thing that is launched, right? So we have the Lightning 1.0 implementation, we have the sidechains bit proposal from Paul, and now we have Diego and RSK launching 1.0 on mainnet of their code of RSK, which is really the first major sidechain implementation. So this is just absolutely huge, people. There's so much innovation going on in Bitcoin. I can barely kind of keep up. But so I just want people to know that that's one thing. And then, so the importance of this, of RSK, is the fact that Bitcoin itself, the scripting language for Bitcoin, is very, very restrictive for a very important reason, right? So we can reduce the amount of the attack surface, so we can have the least amount of problems with other people's money, right? So this is really important, because what RSK does then is this gives almost all the flexibility of the Ethereum network, which is much more flexible as far as programming goes and languages, on top of Bitcoin. So this gives the Ethereum community an alternative execution environment for them to be able to execute smart contracts and their code. So this basically allows for Ethereum to be run over the top of Bitcoin. In a sidechain. Is this about right, Diego?
That's correct. I mean, any Ethereum application can be run on top of RSK without modification, and will be secured by the Bitcoin miners, and will pay for the execution with smart Bitcoins. So you're actually leveraging on the Bitcoin economy. One more thing, because I think Turing completeness is not the interesting thing in Ethereum. I think statefulness is the interesting thing in Ethereum. And that's what the other thing we bring is that, in Bitcoin, every script is the firstborn script. They don't have a memory. They cannot use. I mean, you could do it, but it's very cumbersome. You cannot reuse the output of previous scripts to make decisions. And that's what's interesting of Ethereum and RSK. It makes very simple to reuse, to say, okay, I want to have a wallet that will only spend, $1,000 per day, and I can use previous transactions, to actually know how much of those $1,000 have been spent. And that's something that is impossible to do within Bitcoin. You need to rely on external business logic, in centralized business logic. So that's the key element of these systems. So I think if you combine that with maybe domain-specific languages in the future that are more restrictive, less prone to errors from the developers, you have something that is very good. And that's why I like the simplicity or simple. I don't recall the name of the smart contract language.
Simplicity. It's called Simplicity, and it fits on a T-shirt.
Yeah. Well, that's basically what I was saying for a year now. Like, why don't we focus on having domain-specific languages targeted for specific uses, and very, very likely when simplicity matures, we might add it as another runtime environment on top of RSK. So you will have 15-second validations, cheap transactions, and simplicity to run your smart contract. So you are bound to a restrictive language, and it's more difficult to make mistakes.
So let me ask Paul, let me get some comments from you so far on Diego's discussion or description here of RSK. What do you think of RSK and the possibilities of running these Ethereum type of applications over the top of Bitcoin? And what are your thoughts on RSK too in general?
Yes, well, certainly it's so hard to work with the Bitcoin code base, and the scripting language is very confusing, and all the documentation is terrible. And, so it's horrible. And then, of course, all the people who really know how it works, they got rich a long time ago, and no one can find them. So it is a good challenge if you want to do anything kind of new. Even if you do something new that's a good idea, you have to persuade people that it's a good idea. And it has to be merged into Bitcoin Core, because it'll have to be a requirement that every person running the software is checking that and is at least capable of running whatever this new thing is. So it is horrible it is sad when you watch. You can do, like, someone did this once. I don't remember who it was. It may have been Brian Armstrong. I can't really remember, or Mike Hearn or something like that. Someone who's in the purgatory now or whatever. But it was someone who, they said something like, here's like how to do something in Ethereum, and here's how to do it in Bitcoin. And it's like the most ridiculous demonstration ever of, like, Bitcoin just looks totally convoluted in this thing. So I think it's great that there's a lot of things you'd redo if you wanted to redo Bitcoin from the ground up to make it easier to write programmable money, versus like what you were saying, Vortex, where you were saying it's not really written for that. It's written to, like, not break. So that's nice. Of course, it's great with sidechains. You can have it both ways. One interesting question about RSK is, why are people so interested in Ethereum? Is it because they really, really want to do these things that have all these functions that are all linked to each other, and because you can use statefulness and you can do all these other things? Is it that, or is it just that people are worried about, they feel they may have missed the boat with Bitcoin, or they're worried about, they can't tell which boat is the better boat or the faster boat, and so they're just, I think a lot of people are just, they have no theory on which blockchain is the best, and they will just buy whichever ones they think are getting attention from people. And so that is, and then there's a sort of a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy there but I really don't know the answer to that question at all. So I think it's great that, RSK, there's so many things that they did right. There's so many things that Ethereum did wrong, really, I could say, which is that they just the shameless marketing and just taking money from credulous people, and kind of just this almost commitment to obfuscation that kind of boggles the mind. Whereas RSK did, I think, a much, much, much more honorable thing by taking the money from appropriately skeptical people. It had well-managed expectations, and so I think it's really great. I'm going to feel so bad if Ethereum gets all this money and gets to cash out, and then RSK doesn't get. I don't, it's
well,
just.
you know, we made that decision because there were a lot of challenges in what we were doing. So we felt it was not, you know, appropriate to go to the community and say, okay, jump in with us. I mean,
today we call it an ICO, right? So
I'm not against ICOs, but I'm against of ICOs when you don't have enough like track record to prove that you can actually deliver, and you have minimized or at least, you know, the unknowns. And when we started, it was a white paper. So I mean, that people was looking at us and saying, okay, you will convince 85-90% of the miners of the world to merge mine RSK and Bitcoin, and then they start laughing like crazy, like lunatics. And now we have, you know, 85-90% of the pools in the world have implemented RSK. Now we need to bring up the hashing power, you know, which is what I was saying about the chicken and egg. It's like, you know, they are not going to throw hashing power if they don't see economic value. So we have to like keep moving the ball up, like, you know, doing this, like pulling ourselves from grabbing our hair and putting it out in the air. But
see, the thing is, the question is not a good question. See, it shouldn't matter what I think about RSK. The more important thing is exactly what was just described, which is that the more important thing is that if there is an error or some kind of missed opportunity, that the important thing is that there exists some path for the good idea to succeed against the odds or whatever. So if you have something where it's said that 85% won't do this, but in reality that is plausible and already happened, you need some path to get that out. So the whole point of really sidechains is that it shouldn't really matter what anyone thinks of the idea. I mean, I know you asked about, because we have a specific guest, of course, but that's the kind of thing, is that, you know, in my opinion, doesn't really matter. Like I thought Snapchat was stupid when it first came out. I thought Twitter was stupid. I thought all these things were stupid. I couldn't understand them at all. And now what's wrong about those things? So
I still don't understand.
The more important thing is you have an opportunity to learn.
Go and test
change
it.
Your mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I got a couple more questions then for Diego real quick before we go. So Diego, there's been some question about federation and things like that.
Yes.
A little bit of centralization and stuff. So maybe you could just quickly describe how the federation works, in particular, the counterparty risk of the federation keys, and maybe just not a little, keep it high level if you can, but go ahead.
Well, and that's very connected with what I was describing before about like seeing things as a skill instead of seeing things as a process. You know, it's like, you know, what we believe is in incremental decentralization. We think it's like, you know, being fully decentralized at the early beginning, it's like doesn't add too much value and slow things down, because decentralized ecosystems are slow by nature. And you can see how Bitcoin works, and, you know, it's highly decentralized, highly secure, but moves slow. There's a trade-off. So when you are starting the idea, when you are modeling your idea, maybe centralization is a better way to go. And the thing is that you need to be clear on what's your social contract or what's your commitment with the community. And that's what we always say. We from day zero, we said, you know, everything will be open source. And at the beginning, we had the source closed because we didn't feel it was like of a quality we wanted to share with the world. And people was like saying, okay, what you want to keep you are going to do it private, and then you are against the open source philosophy. And no, it was faster to work like that and close circuit. And last May, we open sourced the code of everything but the Federation peg for the same reason, because we didn't feel it was like mature enough and of a good quality to share with the world. And now in this in the software we just released, that is the mainnet software, now everything is open source. So there's no like, you know, hidden things. So we are delivering on our word. We say, you know, we believe in open source. We think these things cannot be done without open source and community. I think we still need to learn how to work in a community and work through review, like peer review processes. And you know, again, our intention is there, and then we will get there. I have no doubt. So in 2018, we will work a lot on setting up the grounds for decentralized governance for RSK. So we get out of God mode, you know, eventually in 2019, and that's it. So the idea is from the get-go, like come from a highly centralized development model, move fast, and start decentralizing more and more. And in the same sense, as we need a drive chain implemented in Bitcoin, and that's beyond our control, we say, okay, what we can do to start, because we don't want to be waiting forever. So we need to put the thing live, and that's why we created the federation.
Oh no, we might have lost Diego again. But yeah, so
I think that is great though, because my project is in a very similar situation, overwhelmingly similar, where I didn't want to launch it as an altcoin, and I thought that was very annoying. And so I was like, what do I do instead? You know, and I was like, well, I guess, and then I wanted Blockstream to finish their sidechain stuff, but they kind of stopped working on it and moved more towards the federated model and Liquid. And so then
I'm glad
it's a horrible challenge. I'm not sure what it's absolutely fascinating. You can look at like people like Ricardo Spagni, Fluffy Pony. You can look at David Vorik. You can look at Jeremy Rand at Namecoin. You can look at like, how do these people react when you want to do something, but you don't want to be a scam? And it's like, it's quite a challenge. Like, and people have different kind of takes on it. And it's a smart way. It's such a difficult problem, and I don't know what I'm going to do either.
I tell you,
the right way to get. So
I agree. I mean, I love this. How, like, the Blockstream didn't quite finish their side chain, so you created drive chain, right? And Diego, you couldn't wait for drive chain, so you created this federated peg.
Yeah.
And so so people, we're going to get there. We're all going to eventually come together, guys.
Absolutely.
Under this. But
Absolutely.
I just want people to understand. This is very early days.
Yeah, and once the drive chain is there, we will add the drive chain to the federation, and then we have something until we learn enough from the drive chains to make sure that we can use them by themselves. So, that balance between the federation and the drive chain is a good balance, because nobody has the power. It's like not the federation, not the drive chain. So again, as we learn, as the technology evolves, the idea is that this should be fully decentralized or trust minimized, in the words of Nick. But that's a process. It's not something you can do right out, because it's, otherwise you end up doing nothing. Like saying, okay, let's wait for the perfect, two-way peg, trustless two-way peg, and then that might take 10 years.
Kind of what I wanted to say is that it's that I didn't want to do the wrong thing, but was it really the right decision? Because instead, everyone got nothing. You could have been having altcoin Hivemind this whole time, and maybe a lot of people would have really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I want to see Hivemind. I want to see Hivemind.
Yeah.
Because that's one problem. One of the things we want to do is financial inclusion. That's the main purpose of RSK, is creating infrastructure for financial inclusion. And the model I was thinking initially was to create a P2P monetary system, where basically what you do is go back to the gold standard, but using Bitcoin. So every stable asset is fully collateralized and over-collateralized with Bitcoin. But the problem for that is that you need the price discovery that you can trust. Somebody has to tell you the relationship, the ratio between the collateral that is Bitcoin and the stable asset that it might be pesos. So, we need kind of prediction markets. We need some way to have trusted source of knowledge in order to do that. So again,
we're looking forward to that. Hivemind from Paul. Absolutely.
Yes.
So sorry to cut you off. We do got to kind of got to get going here pretty soon. So let me just ask you one last question, Diego, before we go. What are some of the kind of the most exciting ideas or apps that we can build on top of RSK? I guess it's kind of like saying, what can we build on Ethereum? But maybe in your opinion, what is some of the kind of exciting apps that you think will be built first on top of RSK?
Well, as I said, I'm focused on financial inclusion, and again, I'm like, working together with centralized organizations to build this. It's like a mixture of using decentralized technology with centralized organizations. I'm working with the Development Bank of Latin America on designing a project to work on the slums to create first is an identity system based on reputation. So we give the excluded in our society an identity and also a track record, a history, but a history, financial history and behavioral history that it's in their power. So because all the reputational models today are holding in the hands of the companies, are holding in the hands of Airbnb, Uber, wherever. And here what we are building is a system, and a reputational system that is in the hands of the unbanked, of the people who is excluded from our society. And that becomes the collateral for them to interact with financial institutions so they can get loans at reasonable rates and are not, punished because they are unknown or invisible to the system. That gives us the tool also to interact with the government of the city of Buenos Aires, so they can give them the rights of usage of the land they live in, because it's fiscal land. So we are building that. I mean, that's what, what
so Diego, you can't just use
wake
Civic?
up.
You can't just use Civic, Diego? What's wrong with Civic? No.
No, yes. Well, we I mean, the Civic guys are friends, that they say that they will port Civic to RSK. Indeed, they did the ICO in Ethereum because we were not ready, but they are porting it, and definitely we are working with them. Or I mean, in this case,
aren't you crazy not to just do like ICO and CryptoKitten, CryptoPuppy? I feel like that is, that's, you got to be crazy not to have a couple people on that. That's where you got to have your finger on the pulse of Silicon Valley.
I will talk to Vlad. I will talk to Vlad and see if we can do a joint venture, because I think that's a good scalability test. It's like if you have CryptoPuppies on RSK, we can actually test the 100 transactions per second.
Yeah, and there you go.
Exactly. And
you got to import. Try to import. Can you import the state? Have like a flag day. Import the state.
Yes.
Clone everyone's kittens.
Oh, okay. I like that idea. So we have the kitties. Yeah. So we have RSK kitties versus Ethereum kitties, and we see which ones sprout faster. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah, all right, RSK, you guys, it's going to be epic. We're going to have crypto kitties and crypto puppies on RSK, and it's going to be epic. So thanks, guys. I just want to say, we'll close it out here. Thanks, guys, so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate our guests so much for donating their time. I'm really excited about the future of Bitcoin and the technology being created by super smart people like these guys. So, guys, you got to follow these people. You got to follow their Twitter. You got to follow their companies. They're going to be doing amazing things, and they are already doing amazing things in the Bitcoin community. So, Paul, tell us, where can we find out more about you?
Oh, yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter. I am Truthcoin on Twitter. It's the original title of Bitcoin Hive, my white paper. And my last name is unspellable. So there it is, Truthcoin on Twitter.
That's right. Just search for Paul Stortz and or Paul Sports. You'll probably still find it either way. Truthcoin, guys. Truthcoin, really awesome. Truthcoin, Hivemind, DriveChain. This is where you'll just Google those terms. You will find Paul.
DriveChain.info. DriveChain.info.
There you go. DriveChain.info. Diego, please tell the world where we can find out more about you and RSK.
Well, for me, the easiest way is to go to my Twitter account. That's Dieguito, like Little Diego in Spanish. So that's an old account from 2007, 2008. And, and then for RSK, if you go to rsk.co, you'll find all the information, and there are tons of ways to collaborate. You can be an ambassador and help educate people on the usage of RSK for different industries. You can create meetups. We will give you all the tools to do that. You can be a developer. We'll help you, get to customers as well. We are creating a partnership network. I mean, we really want to push this into the practical use cases of a smart contract. So please join. We need people running full nodes, so download your RSK node, make it run. We are building a decentralized network, so everybody should participate.
Absolutely, guys. Check it out. Definitely check it out. RSK. It's going to be pretty amazing, people. Ethereum over the top of Bitcoin. I'm pretty excited on the technologies that we can, the applications that we can really build with that kind of stuff. So again, thanks to the over 1,000 people that joined us live. We really appreciate you.
Wow,
and for sure.
Nice.
I remember when this show topped out at like 200 live viewers.
Hey, that's right. It's true, Paul. You were on the shows of the early days where we only had a couple hundred people.
Yeah, and you had 600, and I was like, oh my god.
Bitcoin is growing, and we definitely thank everybody for joining us. And if you guys missed the show, definitely join us in the comments. We love your comments, and give us, if you guys haven't seen the show before, please subscribe to the World Crypto Network. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it, if you like the content here, and give us a thumbs down, I guess, if you don't like it. We always get a couple of those. That's always pretty fun. So thanks again so much, guys, for joining us. We will be back here again next Sunday. Hopefully, if I can get the guests, we'll be able to be talking about decentralized exchanges and the Lightning Network and more stuff like that. So really, guys, thanks again so much for joining us. Until next time, please keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you guys later.
Bye-bye. Que viva Satoshi.